here tonight for obviously you to have a little look through and hopefully take away with you and buy. But do have a little listen to this story and see just what you can gain from it. Pulling on your heartstrings, understanding from a human nature where it comes from, and also just how professional she is. So without further ado, here is author Miriam McGuirk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I would thank you. What an introduction. Thank you, Liz. I would also like to take this opportunity at the start of this evening to say thank you to you as well, Tracy, for working with Liz and coordinating this event this evening. And thank you all for being here. Fantastic. In planning this evening, I wanted to use a quote from perhaps a strong lady through history. And I was racking my brains. And then I thought, hang on a minute. A few months ago, you wrote a book of quotes. Magical, I've been told, and powerful quotes. So to start the evening off, and this is quite relevant as the theme and my backstory of how I have lived for the last 17 years from a place of health challenges which led me to the mountains of Turkey, and then everything changed and all will be revealed as I move on with this talk. So to start my quotes this evening, and there are a lot of quotes that I've used over the years and they are all in here, hence it's called the Book of Inspiration, pocket book. And it is, change comes with a single step, followed by another, followed by. I always knew I was different, and I always knew that I was not going to go down the normal path, especially coming from Ireland, where the teachers and my parents had already perhaps planned it out, and in their minds they had a little box with a little title on it of how they saw me. And in 1976, giving my age away here, in 1976 I packed a suitcase and left Dublin with a lot of hope, because I had heard that the pavements were filled with gold dust and perhaps the odd piece of gold bullion. But in reality, I jumped onto the treadmill of working and hard graft. And at that point, my business was, and continued to be for 15 years, hospitality, setting up restaurants, and anything to do with the service industry, mainly restaurants and food. And so all of my creativeness, which I was interested in, I had been writing for maybe many years. I was always known as the lady with the notebook and the pen, always making notes, always telling stories. Health and well-being were a huge part of my life. Exercise, fitness, eating well, and anything to do with theatre, anything creative. Well, that all got pushed to the back burner as I focused on work. And yes, I was successful and thoroughly enjoyed it. And that industry was a huge passion of mine. But apologies. Yes, I was also involved in the health and fitness business. And I was wonderful. I mean, I gave a lot of, imparted a lot of my knowledge to my team and supported them. Some of them had health challenges, and that's what you do as a manager, deputy general manager, and so on. Then in 1996, I met my future husband, and we married. And he has since been renamed as my superhero, and that will be revealed a little bit later on. 6 months after Chris and I married, I collapsed. Yes, I had collapsed before, but as many of you already, what do? You pick yourself up and you get on with it. But I knew this was serious. And I knew something wasn't right for 20 years. And I remember my GP actually physically coming to the house and telling me I was grounded. I ended up having something like 5 operations in a few weeks. The scars healed, and then the doctor appeared again. And he said, Miriam, I really want you to take this in. And I really hate to break this news to you, but you have ME in the worst form I have ever had to diagnose. And later on I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. ME, and I talk about it in the book, but in a fun way. But it was quite cathartic for me to write about it for the first time. But if many of you perhaps know, myalgic encephalopathy. It's a bit like having real flu and jet lag every day, 24/7. And fibromyalgia, it's all the muscles, wrists, neck, shoulders, knees, ankles. So that combination of those crossovers was hugely debilitating. And I won't dwell on it, but I was in denial for many, many years. And every time I saw a little window of energy, I kept saying to Chris, but what is my niche? I can't live like this. I didn't accept it. By the year 2000, life really wasn't working. I hadn't I didn't feel any better. The scientific professionals didn't know what to do with me. So in 2000, I decided to just throw all the medication, all the tablets away. Didn't tell anyone. And I had always thought that I had led a very healthy life and a fit life. But of course my immune system was shot to pieces. Everything had broken down. I wasn't absorbing any of the goodness. So I really, really made a point of researching the kind of food that was going to give me the best energy. And hand in hand with that was also researching the kind of supplements I needed. With that, obviously I sought advice from nutritionists and some complementary therapists. And what has really, really worked for me over the years is that combination of aromatherapy and reflexology, wonderfully balancing. 2001, superhero appears home, waving tickets in the air to say we're going to Turkey. Panic, because we had not been able to travel or fly anywhere because of energy, the physicality of even packing a case. And I won't go into the details because it is in the book. We finally boarded a plane that evening. It was the aftermath of
9/11.
9/11.
It's day after.
That's right.
2 days
day
after.
It had never been on my bucket list. It was never a place that I had wished to visit. Many, many times I had said to Chris, why? But the wonderful thing was, within 5 days of being there, in this pure, organic environment, where the food, the freshest of food, that literally was in the sea in the morning and on our table by lunchtime, or on the ground, and brought to our table, you know, for dinner. But what really, really helped me was the healing sea. I call that my real therapy. And Chris would almost have to carry me in the mornings. It's only 500 meters to the beach. I hadn't been able to swim for many, many, many years. And it was a huge, huge impact. And for the first time in years, there was a little bit of light, a little bit like that light down at the end there. A little bit of light at the end of that very, very dark tunnel. And I suddenly felt hopeful that perhaps I needed more of this, and perhaps it would support me. In 2002, I started to go to Turkey on my own, just to see how I would cope and how I would manage, because Western woman living in an Eastern culture, but just because of how I was physically. It was fantastic. And it was around that time as well, I started to write poetry. The wonderful thing about poetry, the inspiration came, again with a notebook and the pen, I would be there. 10 minutes, I had the basis of a poem. And within 2 days, that poem was completed. So for me, what an achievement. And that felt good. And of course I started to learn the language and I immersed myself a little bit in the culture. Chris joined me at the end of one of the last trips in 2000. And he said, you know what, we could base ourselves here. And I thought, yeah, maybe we could. And that's what we decided to do. And in 2003, again with a lot of hope, we got on a plane and we headed east. And our little house, again, was very close to the beach. And I really, really thought I had found my sanctuary. This was going to be my turnaround. And it was for a while. But then 14 minutes, what am I? 14 months later, sadly, everything changed. And all those dreams were shattered. And I won't go into all the details because, again, it's all part of the book. And we actually thought, are we being naive here? Naive foreigners? Are we crazy? What was I thinking? Maybe it's time to go home. Chris, superhero again, always a positive man, a man with solutions. Through a friend, found this little hotel and this little village in the mountains, 2,000 feet up a mountain. Traditional village, untouched for hundreds of years. Came back and said, if I can organize within the next 3 months us to move, what do you think? Well, first we went there I went up the mountain for 3 weeks. Oh my goodness, it was like coming home. The silence, hear the silence, the peace. And my neighbours straight away, they just embraced me. I came back to the UK because I was still having treatment and so on back in the UK. And true as his word, within 3 months, Chris was driving me back up the mountain, and there we were. And I christened the house Pink Pines. So from asking Chris, what is my niche? What do I need to be doing? What I need to say as well is I'd actually started to blog. Well, blogging wasn't known, 12, 14 years ago. I called it blurbs. And I was sending out blurbs to various other websites and people were responding. But I was using I had used for 20 years a pen name, Josie McGuirk. Another story. But out of that, people were inviting me to tea and lunch, and they all wanted to meet me. It was wonderful. And I said to Chris one day, because up to that point I did not have the confidence. I had lost all my self-esteem. I said to Chris, but back in my mind, this book keeps churning around, and it's called Tales from Turkey. I'm going to write it. And I did. And it was a collection of short stories, just about the funny adventures that I had been on as this Western woman living and embracing this New Eastern culture. The book was published in November 2013. And following that, in the new year, I had this renewed confidence. And having been in the wilderness for 17 years at that point, and originally having been in business, my God, did I have to learn pretty quickly and jump on that saddle and really absorb social media, for example, and just how things were done. But I decided, perhaps it's time to step up to the plate and step out and take my place in the light as Miriam McGuirk, in my voice. And my audience, I really wanted to bring them on a different kind of journey. And I wanted to allow them to understand and to learn a little bit more about me, the real me, not the pen name. And so that was the plan. But in order to do that, the I becomes the we if you want to publish a book, as you know. I put it out there. And in August 2014, I had a meeting. And I felt very privileged. I was given a 35-minute slot by the managing director of this publishing company. And it was a bit like the Irish goodbye, because 2.5 hours later, we shook hands and he said, I think we're going to work together. And I knew it was pivotal. I knew something was going to change again. And what I loved about them, and that's Empire Publishing, Richard Hagan and Martin Pentecost. What I loved about them and why we still collaborate, we're still partners, they got me, they understood how I worked, they were tuned in, and they were also prepared to fly the flag for my subject matter at that point. Now since then, there are 3 in this series, Tales from Turkey, and there's all kinds of other different, we call it the ecosystem. So all the little branches, but on one of those branches is Tales from Turkey. So we talked and we collaborated, and I went back into my cave. And as Liz said earlier, last June, Shattered Dreams and Scorpions at Midnight, the first time, as Miriam McGuirk, Shattered Dreams and Scorpions at Midnight, A Search for Sanctuary was released. It is a collection of short stories of all the crazy, funny adventures, experiences. Again, as I say, as this Western woman, moving to a completely different culture, to a completely different way of living, of thinking, of doing. And actually, what really, really helped me were what I now call my Turkish family, who embraced me, who live so simply. There is no stress. And it was thanks to them. They have shown me how to walk my life again. Now, they're a collection of stories, and it's not doom and gloom or anything like that, being this Irish, quirky humour, we call it. But each story is a standalone, but there is a thread to each one. And out of that, it just felt like a natural progression. The quotes came, and with again the support of Empire Publishing, this was released in December. And again, they're standalone books, but they're also companions. And this little book, this pocket book of inspiration, we all hear people talking about how time short they are. We hear about mindfulness and reflection. And my gorgeous father-in-law many, many years ago said, Miriam, he was known as the baby doctor in Maidstone, and he would say to me, Miriam, we are not human doings, we are human beings. And this is about sitting for a while, maybe dipping in randomly when you're feeling a little bit stressed or pressured, maybe even just focusing on some of the, I love the photographs because they're quite powerful. These photographs Chris and I have taken, and some of them, most of them are the surroundings of where we live. So maybe just keep it in your pocket, keep it in your bag, or maybe each day just go through it and just pick them up. But whatever you do, I hope, because for me, I still dip in and out of it. And I know it supports me in times of where I get a little bit anxious or I get a little stressed. There's lots of exciting times ahead. And I am so, so grateful to have been given this opportunity, this second career, this stage. You know, I probably have a lot more notches in my belt than many of you here. And all I would say to you is, if I can change and turn my life around, and I'm sure each of you have a story to tell, and I'm sure there's a book in each of you, and I'm sure each of you have had your own challenges, and it's about finding the solution or finding the way. And I've been given the opportunity to follow my heart and follow my passion, which is to write. And for me, I couldn't imagine a day now of not writing.